Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Living with Lost podcast. Today I am joined by a very interesting bloke. I say very interesting. I don't really know much about you. All I know is we've got a few mutuals and you brought the whole new meaning to a intense gym day, Mr. Obi Burchell. So lovely to have you on, mate.
No, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so for those that don't know Obi, he did the most insane lifting feat the other day. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you did. I've got it written down somewhere, but it was 154,000 kilograms.
Yeah, 154. We ended up lifting 154,630 kg in total in 24 hours, which
Nah,
is roughly under 500,000 cans of Coke, just for
500,000. Fucking
comparison.
hell. Yeah, that is absolutely mental, and I would not advise anyone to ever drink that a much amount of Coke.
No.
But seeing like so obviously we've got a few mutuals and I
Yeah.
ended up stumbling onto your page and I was just like, this is absolutely insane. But what was your kind of motivation, and give us a bit of a backstory and just explain what it was, this challenge. Well, I don't know if I want to call it a challenge, but what this lift, I don't know what you would call it, kind of was.
Event, challenge, fundraiser. Yeah. So my kind of history, kind of with mental health is kind of where it kind of starts, um, and why I did this challenge. So I was diagnosed with clinical depression back about 9 years ago, and that was off the back of me coming within moments of taking my own life. Um, and um, following that, went to see a psychiatrist, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I was put on antidepressants, and I took about half a term off school. And that was kind of my first, and I think a lot of my family and a lot of my friends' first kind of conversation around mental health.
Yes.
Because I know nowadays, it's mental health is everywhere and mental health awareness is everywhere, which is amazing. But kind of
Yeah.
9 years ago, you didn't hear about it. It wasn't something that was talked about, mentioned at all. So it was very difficult because I don't think anybody really knew how best to kind of
Yeah.
um, support me and to kind of for my family and friends to kind of support each other. Um, but I also think not a lot of them really knew kind of the extent to which I suffered, probably until about 3 years ago or so, when I kind of started talking more openly about it. Um, but it took quite a long time for me to kind of accept almost that I have this illness,
Yes.
um, and I think it wasn't until I'd kind of got through the worst of it, and learned to recognize, what my triggers were,
Yes.
that actually I could I could start talking about it more openly. And the more I talked about it more openly, the kind of healthier and better I felt. But
Yeah.
it took what best part of 5-6 years of on and off antidepressants and therapy for me to actually get to the point where I felt I could talk about it. And it wasn't easy, and I'm not saying it was a straight, climb to the top of the hill. It was, I had weeks and days where I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Yes.
I didn't really leave my room, um, and it comes in where even now I kind of have days or so. The same with everybody, that have good days and bad days, but um, that's kind of where my story with mental health starts. And the reason for me doing this challenge really was, through lockdown, was probably the first time I had actually, friends of mine talking amongst themselves on WhatsApp group chats, etc., about kind of mental health and what
Yeah.
what they were struggling with. And I kind of took the view that this would be a great time for me to be able to raise awareness um, about an issue such as suicide and mental health when it's definitely kind of at the forefront of people's minds. But I wanted to do it in a way where I'd actually kind of enjoy the training, and also maybe it would be something that no one's really thought about or heard of, like
Yes.
to do a challenge, and that way it gets people talking, because it's not something that you hear of anybody doing on their weekends.
No, of course not. I mean, it was absolutely incredible, mate. I mean, I've had a few gym days in my life where I wake up the next day and, I'm like, why have I done that? But, this
Yeah,
brings a whole new meaning to the
to
gym,
DOMs. Yeah.
yeah, I guess. But, mate, it's one of the things I've found being a man, and I've spoken about this a few times, but there is just this conflict and issue being a man and talking about your mental health struggles. And I don't think,
Yeah.
as we said, it is something that it's now everywhere, and you can't run away from this mental health conversation. But even still, even though I've still noticed that there is this difficulty and this like skepticism to kind of just sit down with a mate, and just say, listen, I'm not feeling good. I am actually not great. And why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's still viewed as a weakness, being vulnerable as a man,
Yeah.
and there's still the stigma attached to kind of man up,
Yeah.
as a phrase. You kind of grit your teeth, bear it, and move on. But if you look at the suicide statistics, 75% of them are male, and the number of kind of conversations and articles that I've read where people turn around and go, "Oh, we had no idea," or "It came as such a shock to everybody," when actually a conversation between a man and his best mate or his brother could save his life, because
Yeah.
at that point you're then aware of the situation. You're aware. You might not be aware fully to the extent, because they might not want to share every detail, but that initial conversation and sitting there going, I am feeling shit, or I need some help, or I'm struggling, um, that's sometimes the hardest hurdle to kind of get over when you're suffering. But once that hurt,
Yes.
you've got over that hurdle, it's not scary, and actually you kind of feel a sense of relief that you're not bearing the weight kind of on your own.
Yes. I think it's very interesting you use bearing the weight, because when you talk about it, and it's something I've noticed from this platform I've created, it's almost like you're sharing. It's not so much you're transferring the pain. It doesn't do that. But what you do is someone becomes aware of what you're going through, and then it's like, right, this is that much more manageable. I'm not in this by
Yeah.
myself. I'm not waking up
Yeah.
every single day, and hating my life, because I have someone who, yeah, may not necessarily understand, but they know
No.
what it is you're going through, and that can make all the difference. And it took a while, I think, to definitely for myself to break down that barrier and just become a lot more kinder to myself, because I think at the
Yeah.
same time, mental health is something that many people experience, but one of the things I found myself doing was, beating myself up for feeling a certain way. Why? I don't know if that's something you relate to, but it was
Yeah.
definitely why, why can't I be, happiness was a question I always, I was like, what is this so-called happiness? But like,
Yeah.
you can't just find it, buy it on Amazon. Do you know what I mean? It's a
No.
it's a it's a weird experience. But with your with your that's so weird. I've connected it to my AirPods, and for some reason Siri keeps acting up, and
Oh,
it's
fine.
really annoying. It's really annoying me. So Siri, shut up. But no, with your initial, so you said obviously there was a phase you felt or were close to suicide. What was
Yeah.
going through at that point? So how old were you, and like what was going
So
through?
I was 17,
Yeah.
and I think there was a combination of factors that kind of led to it. I think my parents split up 6 months later. So I think subconsciously, if you're kind of around that environment, you pick things up. But I think I was I was in a very competitive school environment as well, and that kind of pressure works for some people, doesn't work for other people.
Yes.
Um, and uh, like I said, there's a combination of different things, but mentally, it's kind of probably have similar kind of thought processes, but I call it spiraling. I think other
Okay.
people have got names for it, but it's kind of you go around in your head, and you kind of the more time you spend in your head thinking about something, the kind of worse it gets, and the kind of the darker the thoughts get.
Yes.
You can have one thought saying, I can't do this bit of work. Okay, I can't do this bit of work. I can't do any of the work. Why can't I do any of the work? Is it because I'm,
Yeah.
those kind of thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, the coping mechanism I found that helps me is talking about it and just kind of being open, because then you're not like you say bearing that weight on your own shoulders, and it's kind of a sense of relief that somebody else understands or knows what you're going through and can offer kind of rational advice or logical advice when
Yeah.
if you're in that headspace, you're not thinking logically, rationally, because of the way kind of your head is programmed and your thoughts are
Yes.
programmed. And the more often you kind of have those thoughts, the more often you think that they're normal,
Yes.
and you think this is the way I think, but nobody else around me seems to feel that way,
Yes.
especially kind of with social media and kind of Instagram
It's the
and
worst, mate.
Twitter.
Honestly.
Everybody uses it to put you kind of your best version of yourself out there. And if you're suffering or if you're struggling, then you're looking at it going, well, everybody else looks happy and is having the best time.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here feeling miserable, and it just kind of
It's like
makes
dousing
it
like
worse.
fuel on the flame. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
like,
no, definitely.
but yeah, it's that whole social media malarkey. Something I often find as well is so what this page that I have in this platform, of course there's positives and there's amazing
Yeah,
people and there's amazing work that is out there on the internet, but at the same time it's so easy to be sucked in. And when you have this spiral, so you call it a spiral, I think I
yeah,
call it more like a cycle, like an overthinking cycle, or whatever
yeah,
kind of cycle. Social media just enhances every little doubt you have about yourself. You're
yeah,
sitting there on your phone, and it could be, you might, like, for me, one of the weird things, not one of the weird things, one of the thoughts that I get, and it pisses me off every single time. Like, I'm someone, I like to be productive, I like to do things, and like now and
yeah,
again, I might not be doing something, I might be watching Netflix, or I might just be sitting on my phone or on Instagram, and then I give myself such a hard time for. I've completely gone off topic here, but it's just
yeah.
like,
No, it's
it's what these are. Like, you just kind of, one
yeah,
thought goes to another, but it's just. And I remember being at a young age, and before I understood what mental health was, and really
yeah,
looked in and got help. I remember sitting in class and kind of wishing that I could like get people to see from my perspective, and like see how my
how you
how my
think. Yeah,
how because I was like, oh, like, I'm in pain, like, why, like, I can't
mm,
explain why, but
yeah.
it'd be easier. Yeah, that's
No, I get what you mean. It's easier to what's going on in your own head, and
yeah.
like we said earlier, the hardest part is kind of getting the thoughts in your head out kind of through words.
Yes.
And it can feel like, as I said, when I um almost took my own life, when I instead of talking to my parents about it, I googled I knew, because I'd thought about it and had those thoughts, I kind of knew what my diagnosis was. And I'm not saying that anybody, but because it would because it had happened for so long,
Yes.
I kind of knew what my thoughts were and what kind of where I was heading. So I googled I went onto Mind's website and searched depression and on my laptop and just gave it to my parents because I couldn't put those
Explain.
thoughts and out there.
Yes.
And yeah, like you say, it's
Why
sometimes
do you think that
almost
was?
impossible. I think part of it's shame,
Okay.
almost. You kind of think, well, I come from a very kind of, Northwest London, very kind of privileged background, upbringing. I went to private school, and I kind of felt a bit like I've got all, I've got at the time, my parents were together, I had two younger siblings, and I kind of thought, well, why can't I be happy? I've got all of this. Like, why can't I be happy? And if I'm not happy, is that being selfish? And then it's kind of more negativity kind of towards myself,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
which then
Fully
kind of
understand that.
adds to it. But then kind of openly admitting that, having those thoughts is one thing, but then openly admitting that is almost like another, different ball game. Because then
Weird
almost by
question.
saying it out loud, it
Wait,
becomes
continue.
real.
Sorry, continue.
No, fine. No, I was just saying, almost by saying it out loud, it becomes real and it
Yeah.
becomes fact. Whereas if you're kind of having the thoughts in your own head, you can kind of escape that process when actually it's kind of like, oh, they're just thoughts. It's not real. It's just kind of
Yeah.
what I'm thinking, as opposed to, no, you've said it. Like, this is what you're thinking. This is real. This is what the diagnosis is. This is how we help. This is how we fix the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're kind of in your own head, it's not necessarily, real.
Of course. And one of the thing, you spoke about happiness there and how you
Mm,
you almost felt obligated to feel happy. Do you
mm.
think that like we almost put this undeniable pressure on ourselves to find this happiness when, sometimes it's just okay to just be okay, really.
Yeah. It's you're not going to be happy. You're not going to run at 100% of the time. It's
Yeah.
impossible. Our phones don't do it. Like, prime example is technology doesn't run at 100% the whole time.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have to sit there and recharge. And it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to just have an average day. But like the same with social media, because it's constantly in our faces that everybody is happy because of the people we follow, and different people are posting each day, and everybody looks happy all the time. Then you kind of feel like, well, if I'm not happy, why aren't I happy? And then it kind
Yeah.
of again can spiral. But it's happiness. You've got, like you said earlier, you can't buy it on Amazon. You've got to find it yourself and find it from within, and do things that to kind of make you happy. Whether it's going for a run, for me, it was going to the gym, um, which is kind of where the kind of idea for the challenge came from.
Yes.
But everybody's got to find their own thing, and sometimes it can be quite difficult when everybody else seems to be happy. You kind of feel a bit more pressure. Um, so yeah, I don't know why. I don't know where the train of thought was going.
Just we'll go with it. We'll go with it. It's one of the things when this happens, when
Yeah.
you're just chatting and you're like, actually, I've got no idea what I was about to say. I do it quite a lot, and
Do
like,
you?
well, as like a podcast like host, sometimes I
Mm.
notice like I'm trying to continue the conversation, and then like
Yeah.
I kind of do like fillers, so I don't really make sense, and then I kind of just like ramble a little bit, like, yeah, that's a really good point and I really agree with that, and then I think of a point and then it like kind of continues. So it's weird. I notice myself doing it, but it's
I'm
just one of
glad
the
I'm
things.
glad it wasn't just me then. Okay,
No,
fine.
no, no, not at all, mate, not at all. But yeah, I think how did you, well, I said obviously you said being in the gym has been like something that has, astronomically helped yourself, but have you always
Yeah.
had such a positive relationship with it, and like how did you get into it, I guess?
I got into it from school. Kind of, I used to
Big
play
lifter, yeah.
football. Yeah, no, I just like going to the gym because I think I liked going in there for an hour and a half, and just sticking my headphones in and
Yeah.
kind of not really thinking about anything, just switching off, um, and just focusing. And it's me and the weights, and it's kind of, but it's also almost uh, like a sense of achievement when you hit kind of a new PB, or you move the weights up, or you hit a new best time on, for a distance.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of those mini goals kind of created a sense of like positivity and happiness, and hitting targets,
Yeah.
which is kind of that sense of achievement.
Yeah.
So I always enjoyed it. I probably haven't trained. It wasn't until the last really couple of years where I've really kind of, I wouldn't say taken it seriously because I haven't competed, but I've actually really enjoyed it and kind of been
Yeah.
quite consistent with it.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that. And one of the things that I really like this word resilience, and it's something. I'm an athlete, and well, I was. Now I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but I think something that this mental health struggle or battle or whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah,
it's definitely taught me this idea of like resilience, and how the fact for like a certain amount of my time I was having to deal with this on like a daily basis,
yeah,
if going to playing, I don't know, working hard, or like if I have a goal and just going for it. It's just, for me, it's like,
yeah,
well, it's like a no-brainer. Like I feel like this, I've built up like this sense of resilience, this kind of like mental toughness, because I've like had to deal with a lot, and like I've dealt with
yeah,
it. And for me, it's like a sense of accomplishment. It's like, yeah, like, mate, like, good on you. Like,
yeah.
why stop here? Why not like kind of continue? Like, do you kind of find that in terms of like the resilience nature of like having dealt with that, and how that can like push you towards it? Or is it like your relationship has kind of been different?
No, I completely agree. Like, I think obviously I can't speak for your or anybody else's experience,
Yeah.
but I know from personal experience, like the amount of strength it takes to, even if it's to get out for a walk when you're feeling like that,
Oh,
um, and the amount of strength it takes to kind of see friends and then put on a completely different face and
yeah.
pretend you're your normal self, and then so the amount of strength that it's kind of mental strength that it took for me, and probably I can't speak for you, but I imagine for you as well, to kind of pull yourself out of those feelings.
Yeah.
I genuinely feel that I could do anything like I put my mind to, that
Yeah.
no matter how tough things get or how much I'm struggling, that actually when the cards are on the table, like I can get through almost anything,
Yeah.
um because I know how much and how much kind of strength it takes to pull yourself out of that.
What was that laugh?
I don't know where I was going with the thought, and then it kind of hit me. Yeah, I know how much it's strength it takes to pull yourself out of that point and that low point, and how close I was. So for
What is
me,
that
kind
low
of,
point like for you, or when you were once there? What is?
it's a feeling of emptiness.
Yeah.
People call it depression is a sadness. It's more than that, because you don't feel sad, you don't feel anything. It's kind
It's
of,
a nothingness.
it's just like like an emptiness. It's more like nothing excites you, nothing worries you, nothing kind of makes you feel sad. It's just kind of an empty, like a lack of emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost the scary part about it, is that while I was like, when am I, going to get excited again? When am I going to look forward to something again? Um, so that was kind of the big thing for me, that it was just a feeling of emptiness, that actually nothing matters, like almost like nothing matters.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's horrible to be like that, because
yeah,
it's like and for some people, I've had probably definitely conversations with my, well, friends, or people who don't understand it. And it definitely, it
yeah,
comes back to the male aspect of it. One of the once I've gone to someone, when I was like, not recently, but I think it was like my second year at uni or something, and I was like, yeah, mate, like, last week, like, I wasn't feeling great, and I just couldn't get out of bed. Like, I was really just having a tough time. And he was like, "Why don't you
yeah.
just get out of bed and, like, and go for a walk?" Like, like, as if, oh right, mate. I did. Cheers for that. It was like,
Oh,
what?
didn't
Like,
think of that one.
yeah, bloody hell. Where were you 2 weeks ago? Like,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
it is a real, like difficulties, and it's something that, you know, you have to be, you do develop a toughness, because as you said, it's like, well, you know, and for me, you know, like, I do sometimes give myself a hard time, but I'm always going to reward myself when, you know, if I go to the gym, or if I do something, you know, on a day when, you know, I'm active and I always keep physically fit and do all of this. But for me, it's like when I'm feeling shit, and
Yeah.
I've noticed I don't now. It's like it's definitely a lot less for me. I don't, you know, before I kind of started helping myself, it was something that was a lot more frequent. But now I'm like, you know, if I notice something, I'm like, okay, let's work with what we have here. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's going to go overnight, and I'm aware of that. But, you know, how are we going to handle it? So I think it's just about having like little principles, little practices in place, you know, and then
Yeah.
kind of working with that when they come.
Yeah, like everyone's got their own kind of things that work for them. Mine is kind of like, you know what, if I'm having a bit of a shit day, I'll be like, right, fine, have a shit day. Tomorrow's a different day. Like you
Yeah.
might wake up feeling fine, you might not. Okay, fine. But there's no point kind of worrying about the fact that, you know, I'm having a shit day. It's more of a case of just it's okay not to, you know, like we said earlier, not to be 100%
Yeah.
of the time. Like you you can't. But
It'd
just
actually be a
accepting
bit
it.
like sociopathic if you were.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, just allowing yourself to have those days, and just sitting there going, you know what, fine, I'm having a shit day. Fine, that's
Yeah.
okay. Like,
Exactly.
embrace it, have a shit day. If you don't want to go to the gym, don't go to the gym. If you want to go for a walk, go for a walk. Like, whatever you need to do, you know, to help. If you're up for it, do it. If not, you know, tomorrow's a new day.
Exactly. And before, you know, you came on, but before we had started this chat,
But
obviously I
yeah.
had a little look at your Instagram and just had a little look, and on one of your pictures, or like you do like these captions, and one of
Yeah.
them it says something like "Learn to dance in the rain."
Yeah.
Um, what did you mean by that?
So that's actually one of my best mates, one of his favorite quotes. And he was talking about it. It's like, actually, you know what? Some days it is going to be shit, and you know, you know, you might have too much work on, or your boss is being a bit of a dick, or you know, you're just having a shit day, whatever the reason is. But embrace it, because you're having a shit day. Have a shit day. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with it.
yeah,
um, and you know, embrace it. Like, obviously, I'm not saying like, you know, you're going to be happy because you're having a shit day, but just kind of don't worry about it,
yeah,
and just sit there and enjoy it, sit there and, you know, embrace the fact you're having a shit day, accept it, and work with what you've got. You know,
yeah,
you're not going to be 100% of the time, and it's just kind of a bit about perception that, actually, you know what, I've worked my ass off the last month. I've done everything I wanted to do. I've been away. You know, I got loads of work done. I got promotion. Whatever it is, like, fine. I've had a great month. I'm allowed a day off.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you
um,
why I love that quote. And, you know, Mom, obviously, for people who listen, you know the story. And she was known as a dancing queen. And whenever she had chemo, or whenever she had anything, you know, she would always dance. And she was someone who loved to dance. So the idea of just like dancing, you know, in the rain, and just like kind of, yeah, like, you know, this is just my situation. I can still put a smile on my face and put a smile on other people's faces. Yeah, it might be
yeah,
tough, but ultimately that's kind of what it comes down to. So I really, really resonated with that. And, you know, obviously you know, you're having these posts on that you put on, you know, they're just, it's that positivity we need. Do you know what I mean? It's just that little, you know, it's that everyone should have a little Obi Burchell's little
post little whiteboard on their profile.
yeah, I mean,
I
I'd
just
rather that than Kim
yeah
Kardashian. Do you know what I mean?
yeah yeah. I think I got inspired. I've seen a couple of accounts that do little posts here and there, and I was, you know, I wanted to like I said, a couple of years ago was kind of the first time I'd kind of opened up on my socials about, the fact I almost took my own life. And I kind of thought, actually, you know what, people, Instagram's great, and it depends how you use it. But for me, I was kind of actually like, why not give people a bit of a positive message every once in a while? It doesn't have to be. I'm not saying, I try to kind of steer away from the toxic positivity of, you have to be happy all the time,
Yeah, yeah,
but more of a case of, you know what, if you need a bit of a kick this morning, or you need a helping hand, or sometimes that's all we need. We just need to see a little motivational message
yeah,
that actually makes us smile, and we're like, okay, there's somebody out there that gets it, or there's somebody out there that you know can go from where they were to where they are now. And actually, my life's quite good at the minute.
yeah. I mean, that's really amazing to hear. And do you notice like your mates being a lot more open with you? So, expressing, because of they see the amazing stuff you are doing and such positive, you know, messages you're spreading. Have you found that they're reaching out to you and just saying, mate, like, yeah, like I'm just inviting that conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I think because I've been quite open about my kind of mental health and battles, um, on my socials for a couple of years, that my friends, we all talk about it, if we're struggling, and we all kind of know that we can lean on each other. Um, the one thing I have noticed is from doing this event was I sent an email around my office,
Yeah.
and I put it on LinkedIn, and that was the one kind of worry for me, especially as kind of being a bloke, that
Okay, I was gonna
you know
say.
talking about suicide, talking about struggling with mental health in kind of a corporate male dominated like work environment. How was that going to kind of affect people's perception? And actually, the response from kind of everybody has just been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually amazed at how, the number of different people that have reached out, the number of people that have kind of grabbed me for a quick chat, like
Yeah.
to say something like, what you're doing is amazing, or you should be so proud, or conversations like that. And
Yeah.
actually, it's an issue that isn't talked. Suicide specifically is kind of an issue that isn't talked about, but actually is probably one that should, more than any other, considering the statistics and the numbers, and um, how kind of male dominated the deaths are.
Yeah. And,
Um,
I'm not someone who, I'm not a psychologist or a scientist and, but, definitely a factor behind that is not being able to discuss it and being viewed as weak for having a certain mindset. And sometimes you can't always change. You can't, you can't change what, like, it's there, like you can't
yeah,
prevent it. It's just something that is there. And there's definitely something that that culture in the corporate world. I definitely, I'm not there yet. I'm still a student, but it's definitely something, I had thought about how
mm,
that kind of world has like handled mental health. And it's definitely a lot more, you definitely see a lot more help going towards it. But I guess conversations about mental health 40 years ago, if you're going to your boss saying, I'm feeling really shit and I'm,
yeah,
suicidal, he's like, can you get out of my office because, you're not actually bringing in any revenue. So
yeah,
it's, there was definitely a mentality I once had that, I'm never going to be successful because, you know, I'm not, you know, emotionless and I'm
ruthless.
not
Yeah,
ruthless. Yeah.
yeah.
A- And I like to think that's not the case.
No, definitely not. I mean, I was very, very cautious and kind of nervous about kind of sending those emails out and putting it on LinkedIn. Um, Kind of for that, not necessarily because I'm ruthless, but more for kind of more worried about what people's perception was.
Yeah.
And I kind of, having that thought process, and I was kind of like, actually, you know what, this is an issue. Like, if you're a man between 18 and 45, you're more likely to die from suicide than anything else.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, well, you know what, actually, like, I don't really give a fuck what people's perception of me is going to be.
Yeah.
This is an issue that has affected me. A number of people I know have been affected by it by one way or another. 25% of people in the UK are affected by mental health every year anyway.
Yeah.
So, if it's an issue that nobody talks about, why can't I be the person to start the conversation?
Yeah.
And I just kind of thought, well, yeah, why not? I've got nothing to lose from it. If they turn around and go, well, actually, we're now worried about you because of this and we don't think you can do the job, well, then that's not my problem, that's their problem. Yeah. But I know, luckily for me, where I work, they've done, they offer kind of mental health first aid training, and they've got wellbeing newsletters, and they've always been very kind of positive about kind of raising mental health awareness. So it was less of a concern, but it was still, putting yourself out there and going, this is me, this is my story, this is where I've been, is always kind of
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
it's I'm someone who does share my story and talk about stuff on the internet, but taking that first step is absolutely mad. Like, I do like poetry, and I had this piece before any of this started, and I was just sitting on this piece for like 3-4 months wanting to share it, but like, almost viewing, like, having that impression that had I shared it on so and so, what's that gonna look like? Am I crying out for attention and all of this? And then I was just like, you know what, this is actually a fucking good piece. I wrote it and I'm going to share it, and whatever you think. And I think a lot of it comes down to, that overthinking nature that you kind of deem people to think certain things and they don't even think about. Like, half the time, like, I'm not that important. I'm not that special. I really don't think, people might have looked at that post and kind of been like, oh, that's really lovely, and just got on with their day. And like, I think it's so easy to, when you're in that kind of overthinking depressive state, it's you kind of you think certain, well, this is speaking for myself here, but it's like you kind of overthink every scenario, things that are so improbable of ever happening, but it's like in your mind it's like, right, this is
the be all and end all.
This must mean that, when like it's a weird world, you know.
Yeah, well, I think we spend so much time in our own heads that nobody else does. Like, if you actually think about the number of times not in a selfish way, but the number of times you think about kind of yourself and about your day and about what you're up to, compared to how much time you give to kind of thinking about other people, kind of just on a day-to-day basis, you could then kind of realize, well, if that's how I think, surely that's how everybody else thinks. So actually, people don't really care about me as much as I think they do.
Yeah.
And there was a book I read as well, which a couple of years ago, which kind of flicked a switch in my head.
What's it called?
It was called One Nun and 100,000, and it's this old, it's maybe a couple hundred years, maybe old Italian book, where basically the main character realizes that everybody he's ever met is going to have a different opinion of him based on their own lived experiences, their own insecurities, their own perception, their own upbringing. And he kind of took the view that actually, if everybody's going to have an opinion anyway, and I can't stop that, why can't I just be myself and be happy?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm stood up, somebody's going to be annoyed because I'm stood up, and somebody else is going to be happy because I'm stood up, and I can't change that.
Yeah.
So why not just stand up? Just do what makes me happy.
That is so interesting, because like, it's something that, I'm someone who likes to make, I don't want to say people pleaser, but I enjoy making
Yeah.
people happy. But
But yeah,
ultimately,
no, I'm the same.
the same, me putting or you sharing, such positive things, not, so you can't make, everyone's going to have such different opinions about you. You can't change what, like, as you said, what they think. And so
Yeah.
the only opinion that matters is how you think about yourself and how you kind of,
Yeah.
how you treat yourself. And that's all it is, really.
Yeah. I'll just try and put a bit of kind of positivity out there so people know that there is kind of a bit of hope and a bit of positivity out there, because especially in the last year, I think we all we've all needed that.
Oh, for sure, for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, and then this kind of led on to kind of wanting to do this challenge to kind of really raise the profile about suicide awareness, and do it in a way that I'd enjoy the training. It would be quite enjoyable to watch kind of the process as well over the course of the year for people, my friends and stuff, and people that were following it, um, and just kind of see if it was possible to do something so
Incredible.
different. Because if you think about, people think about a marathon, they think about running or cycling or swimming. If people think about weightlifting, they think one guy lifting one weight. So I kind of thought, well, how can I almost combine the two?
Yeah. You're a nutcase. That's what you are.
I'm not doing it again. People keep asking me, like, you can do it again
How
next year,
was
and
it
I'm
like?
like,
How was the 24 hours like, mate? Honestly.
so the actual 24 I'm gonna sound like a, but the actual 24 hours wasn't so bad because of the training that we've done over the last year.
Yeah.
And I think I really kind of appreciated kind of the lengths that, like, obviously not anywhere near the same level, but kind of Olympic athletes go to, or kind of professional athletes go to, because we only see the peak.
Yes. Of
We only
course.
see, like, footballers playing on a on a Saturday for a couple of hours. Olympic
Yeah.
athletes playing once every 4 years, and they make it look easy. And like, the amount of work that me and my girlfriend and my best mate, my coach, have kind of all gone through over the last year to kind of get myself to the level where actually on the day it wasn't, I wasn't vomiting, I wasn't passing out, just shows kind of the journey. And the amount of background work that goes into kind of these kind of things is almost more important than actually what happens on the day.
Well,
Because you wouldn't have the journey without, you wouldn't have the end result without that kind of journey over the last year.
yeah. I mean, it's that thing that, people success doesn't happen overnight, and if it did, we'd
Yeah.
all be billionaires, because
Yeah.
that's not the reality. And Usain Bolt trained his whole life to get 9.58
For 10
second
seconds. Yeah.
10 seconds 10 seconds, and like,
Yeah.
that's all we see. People just
Yeah.
obviously saw your journey and, like, on that day
Yeah.
and thought, all right, that's pretty tough. But
Yeah.
actually, it was the whole year before that, and training constantly, that was just as tough, if not more. Having that day was probably, I mean, not something I would ever fucking consider, because well, oh
No,
god.
I'm not saying for any stretch of imagination that the day was easy, but I knew I mean, I was like almost having a panic attack on the morning of, I think, just because I was like, shit, this is actually happening. Like, it's today. Like I can't fuck up now. Like, I actually have to kind of wake up and
Do
go.
it.
um, but the actual day itself I was just running on adrenaline, because I knew all the work that I'd put in the last year. The two test runs we did a 12-hour test run at the end of November and an 18-hour test run at the end of June,
Yeah.
because there was no blueprint for this kind of event. So we were like, right, how long do you need to break in between sets if you're going for that amount of time? How long can you actually train for before you need a break for an hour? What kind of food can you eat? What can't you eat? Do we want energy drinks or not? Because then you'll crash. Um, these kind of things like that you wouldn't normally think about going, doing a workout or running, a marathon.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first test run we did back in November, which was 12 hours, we literally turned up, me and my coach, and we were like, right, let's just start lifting. And when you feel like you're going to pass out, we should probably stop and have a break. So that first test run I did 6 hours straight, and we did higher weights and lower reps because we thought it would be kind of less fatigue because it's fewer
Yeah.
reps. That was a mistake. I think I went for 6 hours straight before having like a half hour, 45-minute break. But I was like in the toilet vomiting. Like,
Yeah.
I think I almost passed out twice. Um, that was not a fun experience. But it then meant, right, we can then look at the numbers afterwards and go, okay, fine. So roughly 2.5 minutes in between sets is probably enough just to kind of give yourself some recovery time. We should definitely drop the weights and up the reps.
Yeah.
It will be less kind of muscle fatigue on you, um, and means fine. Okay, if we're going to do fewer weight, high reps, fine. That means we can kind of spend the next couple of months really improving your strength, and then for the last couple of months before the event, we'll just focus on endurance.
Yeah.
And then we worked out, right, after about 4 hours was kind of the point where you started, passing out and, not being able to lift and kind of taking longer breaks. So let's do next test run we do, we'll have 4 hours on, 1 hour off. And so when we did the 18-hour one, we then went into it, and actually it was, I mean, again, it wasn't fun, but, I wasn't throwing up.
Because you
Um,
worked your way up to that.
as we worked our way up and worked out, right, after 4 hours, have an hour break, sit down, do nothing, have a rest, have a shower. Um, Food was another interesting one because the body runs on two energy systems, one for muscles and one for digestion. And when one's working, the other doesn't work.
Yeah.
So even though I was having an hour break, all the energy was being pushed towards my muscles because I was in a constant state of exercise basically for
Yeah.
4 hours. So what we worked out was actually the first couple of breaks I'll be able to eat food like a wrap or kind of a burger or some chicken. But after probably 10, 12 hours, I won't be able to eat a full meal because I can't digest it.
Yeah.
So then it's just kind of, protein bars, energy bars, sweets, crisps, anything to kind of get calories
Yeah.
in and energy in. And we also found with the 18-hour test run is that energy drinks don't work because of the crash, which you don't normally think about if you're, going for a few hours at the gym or,
Yeah.
um, you need one for, kind of a long day at work, like, which is fine to get you through a few hours or to get you to the end of the day. But if you're going for 24 hours and you're going to be awake for that 24 hours, you're going to crash at some point.
Yeah.
So we kind of steered away from the coffee and the energy drinks, which really helped because the 18-hour one, we just crashed at about 3, 4 in the morning. And I was kind of like a zombie, just picking up weights and not really talking. But
Yeah.
on the actual event day, I didn't really have a coffee. I had a coffee maybe at 8 o'clock at night and then 8 o'clock in the morning. But apart from that, didn't kind of have any energy drinks. And actually, because of that, I didn't crash. I
Yeah.
could kind of just keep going on the adrenaline. Obviously, waters and kind of electrolytes
You
as well.
live streamed it, didn't you?
Yeah, on YouTube. Yeah, I think we had. There was somebody watching at every point, even at like 3, 4 in the morning.
Really?
We
Wow.
had people watching, which was amazing. But yeah, it was just a case of just finding out what worked and what didn't work, and then because there's no blueprint for it. If you want to run a marathon, you can go onto Google and search, right, this is the training you need to do, this is the nutrition you need to have. But for this, it was very much a case of trial and error,
Yeah.
which is also, I think, why people kind of wanted to get involved and to sponsor and to find out more about, because it's not a normal thing to do.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Um, you raised
So
how
yeah,
much?
so far I've raised just over 20 grand, which is
Wow.
an incredible amount of money for Young Minds, for Calm, and for Mind as well. So no, I'm genuinely blown away by the support
Yeah.
for it, because it's just been incredible. Like, even when I came up with the idea and spoke about it with my friends, some of them were like, "That's insane! Like, you're never going to do that." Even my coach, my best mate, he was like, "Let's just stick to 100,000, because let's just stick to that. Let's just stick to that." Because even he thought like 150,000 was a silly amount of weight.
Yeah.
But I think just people have just got behind it and just thought, actually, because it's such a unique event and because it's touching on an issue that isn't really specifically spoken about,
Yeah.
that they want us to kind of support.
Yeah.
And it just raises the profile of suicide and kind of takes away some of the taboo of talking
Yeah.
about it.
For sure. For sure.
Because the number of conversations I've had with people where they've said like, "Oh, you're not going to do something silly," or, "You're not going to hurt yourself," and actually kind of touching around the subject.
Yeah.
When it was actually, if you say to somebody who is feeling suicidal, "Are you thinking about suicide?" It puts them in a position where either they are thinking about it and they go, "Okay, this person understands where my head's at, like maybe they can help,"
Yeah.
or if they're not thinking about it, asking them if they're suicidal is not going to then make them think about it.
Yeah.
It's not contagious.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely kind of still that taboo about saying suicide and people going, "Well, then they're going to think about it." When actually you don't get to that point unless you're there on your own.
Yeah. Completely, mate. Really well put. And thank you so much for this chat. It's been absolutely amazing. And honestly, I learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners did. But before we do wrap it up, I would, if there, well, there's a question that came to me, but say there
Go for
was
it.
someone who was or is feeling suicidal, what advice would you give them?
It gets better, and I know somebody sitting, in that position isn't going to think that, but it does. Like, talking and kind of owning those feelings is okay. It's okay to have those feelings. Life can be shit sometimes. You're not going to be 100%, but it does get better. And the fact kind of you're even willing to kind of listen to this conversation or have this conversation is a huge step. It's a massive step to going, actually, it's the first step, and it's probably the biggest step, is actually sitting there and going, "You know what, I'm struggling, I need help." And it's the hardest thing to do, it's the bravest thing to do, it's the strongest thing to
Yeah.
do, but it will save your life, and it will hopefully put you back on kind of on the path to feeling better.
Yeah.
But it does get better, and just talk, just ask for help. you know your friends are there to support you through thick and thin, and you'd be amazed at what you'd probably lean over backwards and bend over backwards for them.
Yeah.
They'd do exactly the same for you in a heartbeat.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, honestly, thank
So
you
yeah,
so much.
no, thank you so much for having me on, mate. It's been a pleasure.
I just want you to find your truth and stick to it. I know you'll be okay. I know it. From the bottom of my heart, I know it. I love you, Baba.